Ben pushed open the bedroom door, his heart racing as if it would burst from his chest. The soft glow from the bedside lamps cast flickering shadows across the walls, illuminating the chaotic tangle of sheets on the bed. His eyes locked instantly onto Kathy sprawled across the mattress. She wore provocative lingerie, her bare shoulders catching the warm light and her lips curled with laughter as she leaned toward the man beside her. Ben's heart clenched, his throat tightening as he forced his breath to stay calm. The man lying comfortably on the bed turned his head. Roger, Ben's closest friend. Roger, Ben said, his voice even and cold, though it vibrated with a dangerous edge. Kathy's laughter died on her lips, her face draining of color as she scrambled to sit upright. Her shock was instant, and the playfulness in her expression shattered into panic. Ben, don't. Ben cut her off sharply, raising a hand to silence her. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a storm held at bay. You've got a lot of explaining to do. Kathy's hands clutched the sheets tightly, drawing them up over her chest as if the fabric could somehow shield her from the reality of the situation. Roger, however, leaned back lazily, straightening his tie with a smug grin. Hey, buddy, Roger said casually, as if the moment were an inconvenience rather than a disaster. Didn't think you'd be back so soon. Why don't you just walk out and we'll all pretend? Ben's gaze remained locked on him, unblinking and unrelenting. His jaw was tight, every muscle in his body coiled as he fought the rage clawing at his insides. Kathy threw a desperate look toward Roger before trying to regain control of the situation. She sat up straighter, still holding the sheets close. Ben, please, this isn't what it looks like, she stammered, her voice shaky and brittle. Ben's lips curled bitterly. How could it be anything other than what it looks like? His words were sharp, slicing through the room like a razor's edge. Without another word, he reached into his coat and pulled out a manila envelope, slamming it onto the nightstand with a resounding thud. Why don't you both take a look, he said, his tone deadly calm. Roger's grin faltered, he glanced at the envelope, frowning as his bravado began to crumble. What's that? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Ben folded his arms and gave a bitter smirk. Divorce papers. Kathy gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You can't be serious, she cried, her voice rising in disbelief. Serious as a heart attack, he snapped. You think this is some kind of joke? Did you really expect me to walk in here, see this, and just turn a blind eye? Ben, this isn't what it seems, Kathy pleaded, tears pooling in her eyes. She leaned toward him, her voice trembling with desperation. This was a mistake. Ben's temper ignited, the heat rising in his chest. Don't you dare call this a mistake, he snarled. The mistake is stepping off the curb without looking. This is betrayal, plain and simple. Roger, visibly uncomfortable now, raised his hands in a feeble attempt to de-escalate. Look, Ben, this isn't just about you. Kathy and I. Shut up. Ben turned on him, his eyes burning with fury. Stay out of this. This is between me and my wife. Kathy's tears began to spill freely as she reached out toward Ben. I love you, she whispered, her voice cracking. This wasn't supposed to happen. Ben scoffed, the bitterness in his voice cutting deep. Is that what you call this? Jumping into bed with another man while we were supposed to be building a life together? Roger shifted uncomfortably as if preparing to say something, but Ben shot him a withering glare, silencing him instantly. I'm not done talking, Ben said coldly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. He glanced between them, his expression filled with disgust. You both treat life like some kind of game, something you can break and reshape whenever it suits you. But I came here to face this farce, and now I'm walking away. Ben, please don't go. Kathy begged, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. I'm done, Ben said with finality, his voice low but the conviction behind it undeniable. You can keep the house, the car, whatever. I just need out. Without another word, Ben spun on his heel and walked out of the room, leaving Kathy and Roger behind to confront the wreckage of their choices. Hours later, Ben paced the dim confines of his small bedroom, the air thick with tension. The events of the evening replayed on an endless loop in his mind, tormenting him. It was as if the walls were pressing inward, suffocating him with the weight of betrayal. He clenched and unclenched his fists, his breath ragged, every detail of what he had seen, the tangled sheets, Roger's smug grin, Kathy's panicked expression, seared into his brain. His friend Mike entered the room cautiously, concern etched across his face. "Ben, are you okay, man?" he asked softly, trying to gauge the storm brewing inside him. Ben whirled around, his frustration boiling over. "Do I look okay?" he snapped, his voice raw. "Kathy and Roger are together, Mike, and all this time I thought we were friends. I thought she loved me." Mike took a step closer, confusion furrowing his brow. "I thought you guys were just hanging out. When did all this even happen?" "That's the thing," Ben shouted, throwing his arms up in exasperation. "I don't even know when it started. It's like they've been pretending this whole time." In a surge of frustration, Ben kicked the edge of his bed, the dull thud echoed in the small room, perfectly matching the chaos in his heart. "Okay, take a breath," Mike said calmly, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Let's talk this through." "Talk?" Ben scoffed bitterly, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. "What's there to talk about? I've crossed a line. I can't just sit here and accept that." He stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing with a dangerous glint. "I need them to feel what I'm feeling right now." Mike's expression shifted, his voice now tinged with concern. "Ben, you don't want to go down that road. Revenge isn't going to make anything better." Ben clenched his fists tighter, adrenaline surging through him. "Am I better than that? Because right now I feel like I need to show them that they can't just walk all over me." Mike slowly sat on the edge of the bed, keeping his tone measured. "What are you thinking of doing?" Ben paused, his mind racing with thoughts of payback. "Maybe I could spread a rumor about them, something that makes them question their whole relationship." Mike's expression darkened. "Ben, that's pretty low. Do you really want to sink to that level?" "Why not?" Ben shot back, his anger building again. "They made me the fool. They deserve to have their world torn apart for a change." Mike leaned forward, his voice low and serious. "Revenge won't fix your hurt, it'll only make things worse. You'll regret it later." Ben's eyes flashed with defiance. "What should I regret? Taking control? If they think they can steal my life and just walk away, they've got another thing coming." Mike exhaled slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Come on, Ben, think this through. How about talking to Kathy first? You don't even know the full story yet." The mention of Kathy's name ignited the anger in Ben once more. His fists clenched so tight his knuckles whitened, and the fury surged back through him like a tidal wave. "Ben, you don't want to ruin their lives, or do you want to reclaim yours? Because right now this isn't you." Ben turned away, his heart pounding with conflicting emotions. He wanted revenge, he wanted them to suffer the way he was suffering, but something gnawed at him, a small sliver of doubt that wouldn't leave him alone. "It isn't as clear-cut as it had seemed." In the heat of the moment, "I'll figure it out," Ben muttered, more to himself than to Mike, his voice low and heavy with frustration. Days passed, but the anger inside Ben refused to fade. It simmered beneath the surface, burning him from the inside out, making it impossible to focus on anything else. Every thought circled back to the betrayal, Kathy's face, Roger's smug grin, the tangled sheets on his bed. Now standing outside his office building, Ben gripped a thick folder of evidence in his hands, his knuckles white. His heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline surging through his veins. This was it, today was the day he would finally execute his plan, the revenge he had been carefully crafting. Colleagues bustled around him, hurrying in and out of The office, unaware of the storm brewing within Ben. He took a deep breath, steeling himself, and made his way to the break room, where he would make sure to catch the attention of their boss. He found her there, pouring coffee, her face lighting up as she saw him. "Hey, Ben. Just in time for coffee break." Ben flashed her a tight smile, all business, as he placed the folder on the counter. "Actually, I have something more important to discuss," he said, keeping his voice even as he began to pull out the pages inside, one by one. The room fell silent as his coworkers turned to look, curiosity and concern in their eyes. "I've uncovered something shocking," he said, raising the folder slightly for emphasis. "What is it?" one of his colleagues asked, stepping forward, her interest piqued. Ben took a breath, steeling himself for the moment. "It's about Roger," he said, letting the name hang heavy in the air. "I think he's been doing some unethical things behind the scenes." Gasps rippled through the small group, and his boss turned to him, concern etched on her face. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone turning serious. Ben pushed the pages across the counter, letting the evidence spill out for all to see: emails, financial documents, and reports of shady dealings. "I can't prove it yet, but I have a strong feeling it leads back to him," he continued, locking eyes with his boss. "We need to take action before it escalates." "Ben, wait, are you sure?" But he wasn't waiting for an answer, he was in too deep. "Look, you need to see this," he pressed, gesturing to the pages before them. As the room buzzed with disbelief and shock, Ben's heart raced, but it wasn't only from adrenaline, it was also from a flicker of guilt creeping in. He wanted to believe he was doing the right thing, but deep down, he wondered if this would actually solve anything or if it would only lead to more chaos. But he didn't have time to contemplate. The thrill of the moment took over, drowning out the whispers of doubt in his mind as he prepared to watch his world unfold before him, taking revenge in the only way he knew how.